Yo, what is up guys? It is G from EastSideMiniMobberz, and in this video, we are going to be reassembling our MotoVox flip project. If you have not seen the previous videos, we actually stripped this thing down and disassembled this bike, painted it, and now we're going to be reassembling it, making this thing a complete roller. With all that being said, let's just get straight into the video. All of our parts got freshly painted, so everything's got a nice fresh coat of paint on it, so everything just has to get reinstalled. If you didn't see that last video, we also refreshed the seat, so without further ado, let's get that seat on. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my seat installed, as this is now dry enough to install this. And just like that, seat is ready to go. All right, so check it out. Now we're gonna do our foot peg install. You can see I've painted these as well off camera. They came out looking super good. I also painted the spring as well. And make sure when you put the spring on, it's in the correct orientation that it is here. Because if you put it on and it's in a different way, it's gonna maybe wanna force them down, or it's not gonna wanna retract them, like if they get lifted up. So make sure that's on in the correct way. And then we'll take our bolt, which has been refinished as well. All right, just like that, that's installed. And like I said, make sure you take note of that spring position so you can see when it gets lifted up, it springs back into place. And then what we'll also do is I'll install a washer on here, and then I'll take my 13mm nut and tighten this up. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and install the kickstand here. So here's the actual kickstand itself. The bolt will go straight through it. And then I also got a washer for the back side as well, and my 17mm nut. And then now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna install the kickstand spring. When I got this, it actually didn't have this on. So I actually just had one laying around in the shop, so I was able to get this one and use this. So this was pretty much a free repair, because before this was just flapping around in the wind and there was no spring to actually retain it. So on the very back here, there's a stud that sticks out, and that just slips right over the back end of that. And this will go over the kickstand here. So I was able to just flex that over with my hand, and it's installed the way it needs to be. Now we can go ahead and tighten this down. And with that being tight, you can see that works perfectly. All right, you can see I got the handlebar clamps here. I have the bolts off camera being refinished right now. But with these, you can see they're a little kind of messed up. They don't look very good. So I'm gonna hit these with a quick grind off real quick with the flap disc, and then I'll hit it with some sandpaper and then paint these so they look good. All right, and check it out. And these are the handlebars that came off of it. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, if I wanted to paint these and reuse these, or if I wanted to get different ones, or I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, but I think I'm actually gonna try to paint these and reuse these. These are a nice rise. These are the stock ones, I believe, but they're a nice rise. I think they'll look good and they'll match the mini bike. I have another set of bars that are a little bit smaller, but I want this bike to kind of appeal to everyone, so I think these will be better, especially if the rider's a little bit tall, like myself. As the smaller ones that I have, that's going to be a little bit crammed where your knees are at. So I'm going to try to reuse these. I'm also going to try to reuse these grips as well. These grips aren't actually that bad, and they're not that dry rotted or anything like that. So I'm going to try to reuse the grips. What I'm actually going to do is I'm not able to actually get this grip off unless I probably cut it off, because I'm sure it's seized on there. And I can't get this off on there because the way the design, the clamp is, with the grip being on there. So I'm actually going to just leave that and mask it off. And then as far as the throttle cable though, I am able to remove it with 2 Phillips head screws there. All right, and just for the meantime, just so I can get this off of the bike and out of the way, I'm going to remove the throttle. And there's just 2 Phillips head screws, which will loosen this whole assembly. All right, and then it'll come right off and the throttle will separate like this, and then you should be able to just slide the grip right off. Just like that. And you can see that was kind of rusty. Usually what I'll actually like to do is I'll throw some grease on here, or some silicone grease, just so this slides on there a little bit better while you're riding, and there's not so resistant, you know, from the plastic part on here, on the metal surface here. Having some sort of lubricant makes the grip the twist throttle feel a lot better as well. But now that that's off, like I stated, I'm just gonna try to mask this off, but I'm gonna start sanding this down and I'm gonna reuse these because I think these will work out pretty good. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and just sand these down with just some sandpaper here, make sure the surface is nice and smooth and prepped for our primer. Make sure you do this outside, obviously, and wear some sort of dust mask because this can make quite a bit of dust and you definitely don't wanna breathe this in. So as you can see, the parts that I do not want paint on, I have masked off. And I'm gonna start by hitting this with some primer. All right, so I'm gonna put the front forks on. This is our bolt here with the washer. So I'm gonna just line this up here and slide that on through. I'm gonna grab our two washers here that hold this in down here, and then I'll throw my washer and nut on there, on the bottom. Now I'm gonna take my 16mm wrench and my 17mm socket on my ratchet here and just tighten this up. And here we are. It is looking real good. We got the forks already on, everything's looking good. Those bars are nice and freshly painted along with my risers and my refinished bolts. So I think the next thing we should move on is getting those handlebars on. All right, and check it out, guys. We got our bars all completely painted. These turned out pretty good looking, especially with just masking this area off because unfortunately with this style, there's no way to get this brake lever off without taking this grip off. And I know probably this grip's not gonna slide off without cutting it off. And I didn't wanna ruin it because there's no issues and this grip is still good. So I just ended up masking off around there. And yeah, that worked out pretty good. And you can see the bars are freshly painted. And then I masked this side off where the throttle is, because if you paint over it and then put your twist throttle over there, it'll be kind of gummy on it. So I masked that off. So that's looking pretty good, and that's gonna bolt up right there. And then you can see our risers are freshly painted as well. So let's get this mounted up. All right, now I'm gonna take my 13mm socket and my 10mm wrench and tighten this down. And I'm gonna get this, I think, at an angle that'll be pretty good. I think like right about there will be a pretty good angle for somebody to have a comfortable grip on this. All right, and check it out. You can see it is all nice and painted and tight, and that looks great. I think it's at a perfect position too that'll fit many different riders as well. It's not too far forward, not too far back. They're pretty nice. They're a good rise, so I think that's gonna work out pretty good. I think now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is install the brake cable and the throttle setup. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall our brake cable. This cable is actually in great condition and works great. So with this, since I removed it, you just pull this out. So you can slide that on through. And then it might be kind of hard to see on the camera, but there's a little notch in the lever assembly here. So that falls right into place. And then this will just twist in. And then we might have to adjust this a little bit later if there's a lot of slack in the brake line. But for now, we're just gonna screw it all the way in, just like that. And then this will end up being routed up through there or whatnot down to the brake. Or we'll route it through here like this. And then it'll go down to our brake there. All right, check it out. So I have the throttle assembly here, and then here's the housing, which has been freshly painted. Pretty much what I'm gonna go ahead and do. I've already actually lubricated this up with some silicone just to make sure it's in good working order, which it is. I'm also just gonna slide this through though first. Just like that, and then screw this part back on. And then I might have to adjust the tension of this as well at a later point, but just for now, we're gonna just thread it in, put that over just like that. And then on this part here, it's just a little cable guide. I'm actually gonna throw some silicone on this just to make sure it's nice and slick and there's no resistance on it. And make sure it falls down in the middle of where the cable goes right there. Now we'll just grab our twist grip here, and you can see, put the cable right in place there. And it falls down right in place just like that. We'll secure this just like this while you're holding down the cable guide, and then we'll throw the top cover on here. And then just put our Phillips head screws in loosely. And then we'll angle that where we want it right there. That looks like a good spot there. And now we'll just tighten it down. And then be careful with these. Make sure you tighten it down evenly. And these are also notorious to strip out as well. So don't go too crazy on this. And would you check it out? This thing's looking good. We got the throttle cable on there, the brake lever and cable on there. This thing is looking real good. I think the next thing I'm actually going to look at is the rear brake caliper, because I am going to try to reuse this setup. I actually have brand new pads for the other stock one, and they're upgraded copper pads. And I use them in my hydraulic brakes, and they actually work pretty good. So I'm thinking with brand new pads and their upgraded pads, I think it's going to work pretty good with just the stock setup. And then one last thing I think that might make the handlebar setup look pretty cool, and I think it's going to fit pretty well, is this Pro Taper handlebar pad. This is just something that I've had laying around. So a lot of the parts that I've been transplanting for this, like the wheels that I'm going to show you guys in a second here, and this is just free parts. Like technically I paid for them, but I've just had them sitting around for so long and took them off of different projects to put other stuff on. So now they're technically free for me. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that on there. I know they're not Pro Taper bars, but it's nice to have a pad there in case, you know, someone's face does hit that, you know, what it's designed for or whatnot. But it also does look cool, of course. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that on now. And would you check that out? That looks pretty cool. Definitely a little bit more protection, but obviously it definitely adds some more flair and looks pretty cool on the handlebars, I think. So with all that being said, now let's start working on that rear brake caliper. All right, check it out. So I'm going to show you guys pretty much how to replace the brake pads on one of these brake calipers here. This works for the mechanical one, just like this one, and the hydraulic one, because they're pretty close to the same exact design. But you can see this is how it mounts up. These are your guide pins here, so you can see there's a little bit of play within this if it needs to like flex or whatnot. And then this, your cable goes through here, and that's kind of how it works. It pulls, and you can see it presses the pad out, and that's what actually slows down the mini bike. Now these pads actually don't look too bad, but I think I'm just going to replace them with these ones anyways, just because these look like they have a little bit more life on it. We'll compare it as well, but it just takes a 5mm Allen right there, and there's just the 2 bolts on the back here that you just have to loosen up. And just like that, the 2 bolts will come out, and then you'll see you'll open it just like this, and there's both of the pads. And make sure there's this little piece of metal here which acts as a spring which holds them down. Make sure you note the orientation of this when it comes out and you don't lose it. So you can see that comes out just like that, and then there is your little piston there which will push this out, and that's what that looks like as well. All right, I just blew this out. It's all cleaned up. I'm gonna go ahead and slide my piston back in, and then you can see these are the pads that came out of it. Not too bad, they still got a decent amount of life, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw these in because they're a little bit newer, and they're the copper pads, so they should last a little bit longer and stop a little bit better than these ones do here. So just make sure you check the orientation of how this goes. That goes in there just like that. This one goes in there just like this. And then you can see the little piece of metal falls in there just like that. And then before you tighten this down all the way, just make sure that spring is seated the way it needs to be in there, just like that. And then you can start tightening this down. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and mount our brake caliper with the new pads in there, just like how it was from the factory. You can see there's threads on this side, and this is the bolt that comes with it. And you can see, you just put it up on the back side here, and it'll thread into the caliper. Nice and snug there. So what we'll do next is we'll put our cable through. You can see one side is a little bit bigger than this side here. So this side slides through, and then the end of the cable rests just like that. And then this on our banjo bolt
has a little hole. And the cable will go straight through it just like that. And then we're just gonna twist this and just leave it loosely because I'll have to tighten this up and adjust it later on once the rotor's in and the wheel's on.
All right, and with the rear almost being buttoned up, I think I'm gonna start working on putting the front wheel on. All right, and these are the wheels that I'm gonna be using. This one was the one that was actually already on there, and then this one was from another project that I have laying around on the side of the house. So the tires actually match, because if you remember, the front one was this like Monster Moto, Mega Moto style tire, and the other one was a like Go Power Sports knobby tire. So I obviously want them to match, and this is gonna look a lot better. So this one was from the front, and I actually aired up the tire. I looked at it. There's no dry rotting, there's no cracks, there's no nothing like that. I aired it up to 20 psi, and it's still at 20 psi, and I did that a few days ago. I also sprayed it with some soapy water too to see if there was any sort of leaks or anything like that where, you know, I would personally say that it would be, you know, unusable, because I don't want to, you know, install something like that on here. And it held there just fine. So this tire, as far as I'm concerned, is in pretty good condition still, and there's still a little bit of tread left on this. So I'm just going to go ahead and use it. And then for the rear, this was off another project. It's got a little bit better tread, which is good because it's going to be on the rear. But same deal with this one. I aired it up, hit it with some soapy water to see if there was any sort of leaks or anything like that. No leaks at all on this one. So this one's pretty good as well. So actually what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is I'm going to just try to wash them with some water, clean it up, and then maybe hit it with some paint just to kind of make sure it looks pretty nice and stuff like that, and it's not all faded. And then we can get to mounting these. All right, and you can see we kind of got our wheel cleaned up quite a bit just to get the loose dirt and stuff like that off. Just so we can paint this a little bit easier, I'm going to be taking this rotor off right here, and you can see it is just the 5 Allen bolts that are holding it on, and I believe it is a 5mm as well. It might be different on yours, but you can see one of the ones is missing. So with a little bit of editing magic, and just like that, the rotor is off. I'm going to go ahead and clean this one up quite a bit, and then hit it with some paint. And would you check it out, both of our wheels are freshly painted, ready to go, but let's start working on that front one and get it mounted up.
All right, check it out. So we're gonna mount up our front wheel. We're gonna start by taking our axle, putting it through, and taking our spacer here, and putting that on just like that. Then we'll grab our wheel, line it up with the spacer on that side, and then we'll grab our other spacer and thread on our nut. Now I ended up moving it off the stand, otherwise it'll teeter-totter a little bit too much. So now we're gonna go ahead and tighten that nut in the bolt. So we'll take our 14mm wrench and then our 19mm socket. All right, now that it's all painted, I'm gonna go ahead and reinstall our brake rotor. Now I'm just going to take my bolts that I took out of here, which have been refinished as well, and reinstall these. I also found another bolt as well to go in here because this only had 5, it was missing one. So now it'll be secured with all 6. And you don't got to go too tight on these either, just make sure they're snug. You don't want to strip out the bolt or strip the threads. And just like that, the brake rotor is done, ready to go. So now we can look at our sprocket. So this is the sprocket that I'm going to be putting on it, which I actually got this from Amazon in a little kit for pretty affordable. When I'm done with the whole flipping process and stuff like that, I'll tally up all my expenses of how much money that I have into this bike. But I got this on Amazon for a pretty good price. It also came with a chain tensioner as well, which is nice because I need a new chain tensioner. The one that's on there is all chewed up, and this one's actually metal, which is really nice. But this is a 62 sprocket from Amazon, number 35 chain, so it's going to work perfectly with what the setup that we're going to be running for this. But I chose this one because, number one, I think it looks really cool. That's definitely going to add a little bit of flair to the bike as well, but it's number 62, so I think that should give us a pretty good acceleration, but also a pretty decent top speed, depending how this motor works out and stuff like that, how high it revs and whatnot, and how heavy the rider is. This should give us a pretty decent top speed for sure, definitely over 40 miles an hour for sure. So we will be installing this here. And then these bolts that are included in the kit are 8mm bolts. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and mount up my rear wheel. along with my bolt in the spacers. Now, like I said from the beginning, make sure you take note of what spacer goes on which side, because more than likely they're going to be different sizes. So you can see there's two sizes. This one's a little bit bigger, this one's a little bit smaller. The smaller side one on this particular bike goes on the brake caliper side. So I'm going to put in the bolt. All right, that's going through. And then we'll take our longer spacer here. And just like that, the rear wheel is installed. And we'll use our 19mm socket and then our 14mm wrench to snug this down.
And would you check that out? We got the rear wheel all mounted up, bolted up, and tightened. This thing is really coming together as a roller. There's one last thing that we need to do, and that is set the brakes.
So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make sure that all the slack is pulled out of this cable here. And I'm just gonna tighten this banjo bolt up right here. Come up here, make sure it works. And you can see that works perfect. And that locks up the rear brake real nicely, just with the stock cable manual brakes. That works perfect, nice and tight. Let's throw some zip ties on this cable here and make it nice and tight.
And would you check that out, guys? We are completely done with the frame, painting it, and getting it back together. This frame and this bike itself was actually, realistically speaking, in great condition. There was no issues or anything really with it. It was just dirty and needed a paint job, and that's exactly what we did. We painted and refinished all the parts, painted all the bolts, and refreshed the seat. We painted the bars, refreshed the bars a bit, clear coated everything so it's nice and protected and looks real good. Painted the wheels, even the tires. The tires still have a decent amount of tread, especially for the street, and there's no cracks, there's no nothing, and they hold air great. This bike honestly was in mint condition and just needed a little refresh, and that's exactly what we did. So you can see this thing is all together, all tight, all ready to go. You can see so far we've just added a new sprocket, which I got on Amazon, which was pretty affordable. We added that pad, which I already had just laying around, so that was free for me. I added a brand new throttle cable to work with the upgrade we're going to be putting on that motor. Stay tuned to see that. I've also added new brake pads, which I had just laying around, so that was technically free as well. You can see everything is all together, ready to go. This thing turned out looking great. I'm already so happy with how this looks. And also we added the spring on the kickstand, which, like I already stated too, I had that laying around, so that was free as well. So this thing is ready to go. I'm so happy with how this thing looks. Make sure you guys stay tuned for the next video where we're gonna be tearing apart the motor and making sure the motor's right and getting this thing going. And this thing is gonna be mobbing, trust me. So with all that being said, make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe, and you stay tuned because you do not wanna miss the next episode of this. We're going to be flipping this bike for profit and seeing how much profit we can make, and also getting this ready for a new rider. So with all that being said, make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe, and peace.